Puerto Rico's history is a tapestry shaped by a series of pivotal moments that defined its identity and trajectory. From its early days as the homeland of the indigenous Taino people to centuries under Spanish colonial rule, and then its complex relationship with the United States, the island's story is marked by resilience, resistance, and transformation. Here are 10 key dates and events since 1493 that have had the most impact on the political, cultural, and social landscape of the island and its people. Number 1, November 19th, 1493, Columbus's arrival in Puerto Rico. Christopher Columbus arrived on the island during his second voyage to the Americas, claiming it for Spain. Known as Borinquen to the Taino people, it was renamed San Juan Bautista by the Spaniards. This marked the beginning of Spanish colonization, which drastically transformed the island's demographics, culture, and society through the decimation of the indigenous Taino population and later the introduction of West African slaves. Number 2, August 8th of 1511, the Taino revolt against Spanish rule. Almost 20 years later, as the Spanish were consolidating their hold on the island, the Taino were by then fed up with their plight under these new rulers. Led by Agüeyvana II, the indigenous Taino revolted against Spanish oppression in a courageous attempt to reclaim their land and freedom. Although unsuccessful, the revolt symbolized the early resistance to colonial domination and left a legacy of defiance that resonates in Puerto Rican history. Number 3, September 24th, 1868, El Grito de Lares. This next key date in the history of Puerto Rico would occur over 350 years later, with another rebellion. By that time, a new people had formed with a distinct culture and identity. On September 24, 1868, Puerto Ricans staged their first major revolt against Spanish rule in what became known as Grito de Lares. Organized by Ramon Emeterio Betances and Segundo Ruiz Belvis, it aimed for independence and social reforms. Although the rebellion was suppressed, it remains a cornerstone of Puerto Rican nationalism and the island's quest for self-determination. Number 4, March 22nd, 1873, the abolition of slavery. One of the demands of the Grito de Lares rebellion was the abolition of slavery. Due to the pressure and fear of more rebellions, 5 years later, the Spanish officially abolished slavery in Puerto Rico on March 22nd of 1873, freeing thousands of African-descended individuals who had been forced into labor on plantations. The abolition marked a critical step toward social progress and equality, influencing the island's evolving identity. It's also important to note that way before 1873, many slaves in Puerto Rico had already been free. Number 5, December 10th, 1898, Treaty of Paris, United States takes over Puerto Rico. By the end of the 19th century, Spain was a diminished colonial power, with only 3 colonies at its possession. Lurking in the north was an emerging power, the United States, who took the opportunity to wrestle Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines away from Spain. This resulted in the Spanish-American War. The Treaty of Paris ended the Spanish-American War and transferred Puerto Rico from Spain to the United States. It marked the beginning of a new colonial relationship, with the island becoming a U.S. territory. This shift introduced new economic and political dynamics as Puerto Ricans would now navigate life under a new colonial power. Number 6, March 2nd, 1917, the Jones-Shaffer Act. One of the many laws imposed by the U.S. on Puerto Rico was this act. The U.S. granted, or some would say imposed on Puerto Ricans, U.S. citizenship through the Jones-Shaffer Act, allowing them to serve in the U.S. military and participate in some aspects of their own governance. However, it also reinforced Puerto Rico's territorial status, denying full political representation. This act highlighted the tension between integration into the U.S. and aspirations for self-rule. Number 7, October 30th of 1950, the Nationalist Uprising. This would mark the third major rebellion in the history of Puerto Rico, this time against U.S. colonial rule and abuses on the island. The insurrections began on October 30th, 1950 in Jayuya, upon the orders of Pedro Albizu Campos, president of the Nationalist Party. Uprisings occurred in Peñuelas, Mayagüez, Naranjito, Arecibo, and Ponce. The most notable insurrections occurred in Utuado, Jayuya, and San Juan, Puerto Rico. The revolts were not limited to Puerto Rico. They included a plot to assassinate the President of the United States, Harry S. Truman. On November 1st, 1950, two nationalists attacked the Blair House in Washington, D.C., where Truman was staying while renovations were being made to the White House. The U.S. responded by declaring martial law on the island and used military force to suppress the rebellion. But the event became a symbol of resistance against colonial oppression. Number 8, July 25th, 1952, the establishment of the Commonwealth. 2 years later, under the leadership of Luis Muñoz Marin, Puerto Rico adopted its own constitution and became a Commonwealth of the United States. This status granted limited autonomy and local governance while maintaining the island's territorial relationship with the U.S. Though a milestone in political development, the Commonwealth status also sparked ongoing debates about Puerto Rico's political future. Also during this time under Luis Muñoz Marin, the industrialization of Puerto Rico, known as Operation Bootstrap, was in full force. Operation Bootstrap greatly improved the livelihoods of many Puerto Ricans, but it turned people away from farming and producing their own food. And it also began mass migrations into the United States mainland, specifically New York City. Number 9, June 1st of 2016, Promesa Act signed into law. Over 60 years later, Puerto Rico found itself with a debt crisis. The debt crisis was caused by decades of excessive borrowing to cover budget deficits, combined with economic decline following the repeal of U.S. tax incentives that drove away businesses. This was exacerbated by population loss, government mismanagement, and limited financial tools due to its status as a U.S. territory. The U.S. Congress passed the Puerto Rico Oversight Management and Economic Stability Act, PROMESA, to address the island's massive public debt crisis. The law established a fiscal control board with sweeping powers over Puerto Rico's finances, fueling criticism of its undemocratic nature and highlighting the island's colonial reality in the 21st century. Number 10, September 20th of 2017, Hurricane Maria. 2 years later, still reeling from its debt crisis, Hurricane Maria devastated Puerto Rico as a Category 4 storm, causing widespread destruction, power outages, and thousands of deaths. The inadequate federal response exposed deep inequalities in Puerto Rico's treatment as a U.S. territory, but it also exposed corruption by the local governments on the island. Hurricane Maria was the worst natural disaster to ever hit Puerto Rico. The aftermath revitalized calls for political change, whether through statehood, independence, or enhanced autonomy. And that does it. For those who want more information about these dates, check out this playlist of videos that cover all of these events and dates in much more detail. Let us know what you think in the comment section below. Help us to spread this video by sharing. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more videos.